We'll enjoy ourselves far more without you present. Those words echoed inside my head long after our telephone discussion concluded. I just stared blankly at the surface of my flat's wall, the quiet emptiness around me suddenly overwhelming. My mother's tone, usually sharp and direct, had never seemed quite so deliberate and unkind. I attempted to laugh it off. Perhaps it was some kind of prank. Maybe they were putting me to the test. One of my mother's strange little mind games. Yet, when I reviewed the family's online chat again, the pictures painted a distinct picture. Faces brightened by the sun, beverages beside the pool, matching outfits that announced, "Summer 2022, Kin comes first." Only I was missing from every image. There wasn't even a mention of me. Just a few days prior, I had been informed the yearly family retreat would be moved to a later date due to budget concerns. No trip this time. We all need to practice more fiscal responsibility, my father had stated in his typical calm, sensible manner. Consequently, I canceled my vacation time from work and rescheduled meetings I had painstakingly cleared from my calendar. And here they were now. My mother, father, my two siblings, their partners, and even my young niece, posing before the five-star Riviera Point hotel I had suggested several months prior. No explanation given, no invitation extended, just quiet until I made the call myself. "Eleanor," my mother had sighed, clearly irritated. "You're always so easily upset. We simply felt like we could use some time to unwind without any drama." "Drama," I repeated. "You are constantly working, perpetually serious. Honestly, we'll enjoy ourselves far more without you present." That was the precise moment. The instant something within me didn't just split. It fractured entirely. Still, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't shed any tears. I just calmly stated, "Understood. Thank you for the clarification." And I ended the call. I remained seated alone for several hours, completely still. Not exactly sad, not precisely. Just feeling numb, like I just witnessed myself being erased from the narrative of my own existence. This feeling wasn't new. Not truly. I had been the one overlooked for many years. Growing up, I was the meticulous one, the thoughtful soul. While my siblings roughhoused, socialized, and accumulated penalties, I color-coded my notes and taught myself how to construct online platforms in middle school. I secured my first position at 17, earned a complete grant to State University, an advanced degree from City Business School, and by 35, I was spearheading innovation at a growing travel software firm. Yet back home, none of it seemed to matter. I was merely Eleanor, the reserved one, the excessively serious sister, the challenging daughter. When I acquired my small house, my father made a remark about me overcompensating because I lacked a significant other. When my application was featured in a major business journal, my mother commented, "Oh, your brother's friend got an article in something called another industry publication." That is comparable, isn't it? It felt as though I was invisible unless there was some way they could benefit from me. And perhaps that was what caused the deepest hurt, that after everything, the time invested, the calls I answered late at night, the travel home for every birthday celebration and milestone, they didn't just forget about me. They actively chose to leave me out. Even so, it wasn't until much later that night, while I lay in bed, scrolling through the hotel's online site, that a concept began to form. A ludicrous, delightful, utterly improbable concept. The resort appeared familiar. I recognized the visual identity. That wasn't unexpected. The visual identity scheme and client interaction map originated from a specialist firm I had quietly purchased last year through a holding company. My company had acquired a portfolio of smaller agencies specializing in luxury accommodation reinventions. This particular resort was one of our key achievements. I navigated through the employee profiles, and there he was, Marco Rossi, general manager, former mentor. One of the kindest, sharpest intellects I had collaborated with in Greece. I tapped the contact option, but didn't begin typing yet. Instead, I stared at the flashing cursor and posed a single query to myself. What might occur if they viewed me not as Eleanor the Forgotten, but as Eleanor, the mastermind behind the very extravagance they were currently enjoying without me? The following morning, I retrieved my workstation, brewed a double portion of coffee, and commenced working. The strategy had to be precise, tactical, almost theatrical, Because this time, I wasn't merely going to appear. I was going to show them precisely who they had underestimated, and it would commence with one perfectly timed electronic message. Subject: top-floor penthouse reservation request. Eleanor Walker, CO. Marco replied within 4 hours. Agape Eleanor, naturally I remember you. What a lovely surprise. I had no inkling you were linked to R&W Holdings. It makes complete sense now. How may I assist you? His friendly, slightly formal manner brought a smile to my face. He always addressed me as Agape, dear. It reminded me of late-night work sessions in Athens back when I was still proving my capabilities and he was managing operations like a perfectly tuned orchestra. He had instructed me more about handling pressure gracefully than any academic ever could. They are staying at your establishment, Marco. My family, but they are unaware of my connection to the property. His response came after a brief pause. Understood. Say nothing further. Simply inform me what you wish to arrange. And so I did just that. It wasn't about retribution. Not genuinely. It was about altering their perspective. If they couldn't see me when I was directly in front of them, perhaps they would finally see me when I entered through a different pathway, the one backed by influence. I reserved the top-floor penthouse for my personal use, an expansive villa-style layout situated on the cliff face with private terraces and a full dedicated service team. I also booked the Olympic Hall for a private VIP client experience scheduled to occur on their final evening. Marco didn't express any hesitation. He upgraded their lodging to the executive level, covered under a strategic client courtesy, and promised to manage the revelation with discretion. Should I notify them in advance? He inquired during a follow-up call. No, I stated, taking a sip of my coffee. Let it happen naturally, but upon my arrival, I would like the manager on duty to welcome me personally. Ensure it feels sophisticated. Certainly, Eleanor, it would be my pleasure. And just like that, the situation was set in motion. However, I wasn't going to arrive in the middle of their holiday as the disgruntled outsider disrupting the enjoyment. That would have simply confirmed their worst assumptions about my nature. I had a week to get ready, a week to transform into not just someone they couldn't disregard, but someone they never imagined they would need to respect. I immersed myself in the specifics with surgical precision. Attire, clean lines, tailored fit, muted colors, refined quality. I had no desire for loud designer emblems shouting for attention, but everything I packed subtly suggested custom craftsmanship. Linen jumpsuits from a small workshop in Crete. Footwear from a traditional leather business in Santorini. A pendant that had belonged to my grandmother, reset in a simple gold mounting. Cosmetics. Light application. Hair. Styled but uncomplicated. No overcompensation. No performance. Authority, when authentic, requires no elaborate dress. And yet, beneath the composure I was cultivating, something darker was simmering. I couldn't stop replaying my mother's voice. We'll enjoy ourselves far more without you present. That was the part that affected me most deeply. Not the fact that they were untruthful. Not the fact that they went without informing me. But that specific sentence, that cruel, simple truth, they didn't even bother to soften. It had been present in the atmosphere my entire existence. They just finally articulated it out loud. So I channeled that energy. I directed every bit of that painful feeling into the strategy. I even reviewed the hotel's guest interaction manual, the exact guide I helped create for Marco's location when we revitalized their luxury service process. I made notes on how the front desk personnel should address me, when to offer the sparkling wine, and how to signal the staff for recognition. This wasn't about creating a spectacle. It was about maintaining precision. By Thursday afternoon, my flight arrangements were confirmed, a private jet chartered through my firm's travel affiliate. My assistant, Sophia, looked up from her monitor as she handed me the final printed itinerary. You know, they truly won't anticipate this. I am not undertaking this for the purpose of surprising them, I responded. I am doing it so I am never compelled to diminish myself again. She paused, then gave a nod. Well, I truly hope you succeed in making them uncomfortable enough to finally confront their silence. I smiled gently. Sophia had been with me since I started building this organization from a shared office space and a used portable computer. She understood the burden I carried and where it originated. That evening, I packed all my belongings with meticulous care. Then I sat at my workstation and composed one final item. A written piece. Not intended for them, but for myself. A prompt that my inherent worth never depended on their acceptance. I folded it neatly and placed it inside my carry-on bag beside my boarding pass. As I secured the zipper on the bag, I glanced out at the city's skyline, illuminated against the darkness. They had undertaken the journey without me. Now, I was arriving, but strictly on my own terms, and they had no comprehension that the individual walking through the polished entrance hall next would be the one who held ownership over the story they were still attempting to exclude me from. The resort came into view like something from a dream. Pale stone structures integrated into the cliffs, olive branches swaying in the gentle wind, and the ocean stretching out in limitless blue. As the vehicle ascended the winding pathway, I sat in the back seat in silence, hands resting together, posture composed. Marco had dispatched a personal driver, naturally, a dark vehicle with tinted windows and chilled bottled water waiting in the beverage holder. I could have utilized the standard shuttle service used by all other guests. I could have passed through the same check-in queues, permitting chance to govern the meeting, but this was not about chance. This was about achieving clarity. The vehicle slowed as we passed through the entrance gate where a discreet metallic sign stated, Azure Heights, a Walker and Price property. My name was not displayed there. Naturally, not for the public, but I had overseen the consolidation that integrated this location into our holdings. I had been the one to negotiate the architectural modifications that elevated it into a luxurious haven. Now, I was here to pass through the environment I had helped construct and finally be fully acknowledged. The vehicle pulled into the circular approach lined with cypress trees. Service staff moved with practiced grace, greeting visitors in hushed tones. As my driver opened the door, I stepped out calmly, taking in the surroundings as if I belonged, because I absolutely did. Miss Walker, a recognizable voice called from the polished stone steps. Marco, looking impeccable as always in a dark suit and a simple pocket square, approached with a warm smile and extended hands. Benvenut, welcome back. Thank you, Marco, I replied, returning his embrace. It feels good to be here again. I have handled every detail, he stated, lowering his voice slightly. Your suite is prepared. The personnel are informed, and the family arrived yesterday afternoon. They are quite lively, as anticipated. I offered a dry chuckle. That is certainly one way to describe them. As he escorted me through the main reception area, all flowing natural light and intricately carved wooden details, visitors turned to observe me, their curiosity subtle. I did not stand out conspicuously. Not flashy, not renowned, but I carried myself with the bearing of someone who did not require permission to be present. That is the distinction I had come to understand. Not the attire, not the formal titles, but the inherent knowing. We passed the front desk where the attending clerk addressed me as Sonora Walker and presented my lodging key within a velvet line folder. Within minutes, I was being accompanied to the top-floor penthouse via a private lift, while a separate staff member transported my baggage through a service entrance to prevent any disruption. The suite was precisely as I remembered from the conceptual designs. Imported marble flooring, sweeping views of the coast, an infinity pool that seemed to merge seamlessly with the ocean below. Every particular, from the citrus fragrance towels to the carefully selected artwork, spoke of understated richness. I paused by the large window for a moment, looking down at the main pool area. There they were, my family soaking up the sun, having drinks, laughing together. My mother was reclined beneath a patterned parasol, conversing animatedly with my sibling Michael. My father was chatting with the beverage attendant. Sophie, my niece, was scrolling on her communication device while dipping her feet in the water. And then there she was, my other sibling's partner, Chloe, wearing the same silk wrap I had presented her last holiday season, the one she had claimed she never obtained. I observed them through the transparent barrier as a dull ache settled behind my ribs. Not a feeling of anger, not even betrayal, just a familiar kind of emptiness, a void where a sense of belonging should have resided. The entry signal sounded softly. Miss Walker, the personal attendant said quietly. Your welcome meal is prepared on the terrace. Excellent, I responded. Kindly inform the front desk personnel that I will be attending the client function in the hall tomorrow. Oh, and make a note for the culinary staff. No shellfish. My niece has an adverse reaction. He paused briefly, appearing surprised. Certainly. We will ensure that is accommodated immediately. Small nuances, tiny threads of consideration, quiet indications that I was acquainted with these individuals better than they ever attempted to know me. That afternoon, I moved through the grounds like a phantom. I did not approach them directly, did not interrupt their constructed reality, but I was present in the passage behind them during their evening meal, in the lift carriage one level above them, in the exact retail space where Chloe voiced complaints about the cost of the vintage, not realizing the bottle she was holding bore a label I had assisted in bringing to the market. At one moment, I noticed my niece glancing up from her spot by the pool lounge and catching sight of me through the dining area window. Her gaze lingered for a second, filled with curiosity. I simply offered a gentle smile, then turned and continued walking away. Tomorrow would be the moment of revelation. But today was the quiet before the transformation. And I wanted them to sense it, that feeling of unease, that subtle flicker of something they couldn't quite identify because something significant was approaching, and it carried my designation. The subsequent morning commenced like a scene from a cinematic production. Clear, aerial conditions, a soft air current carrying the scent of fragrant blossoms and the ocean, the sound of gentle waves washing ashore below the cliff base. I awoke ahead of schedule, not from nervousness. Those feelings had dissipated, but from the awareness that today marked a significant alteration, a pivotal turning point, one I had anticipated, even if I had never acknowledged it to myself until this instant. My communication device vibrated. An electronic message from Marco. All arrangements are complete. Personnel are briefed. Hall is ready. We commence at midday. I responded with a confirmation symbol, then took my time preparing myself. A white sleeveless one-piece garment cinched at the waist, gold bands at the wrists, hair styled loosely, minimal cosmetics, and the emerald ring my grandmother had bequeathed to me. The presentation was intentional, clean, appropriate for my profession, commanding, yet understated. It did not demand attention. It simply anticipated it. At 11:45, I departed the suite and descended to the principal floor via a private passageway that led to the eastern section where the hall was situated. It had been transformed overnight. Spherical tables covered in white material, a branded background featuring my firm's insignia alongside the resort's, and calming instrumental sound playing over the acoustic system. The family believed it was a corporate gathering. They had been extended an invitation to buy the manager as an unexpected bonus, one of the advantages of their complimentary executive upgrade. They had no idea they were the primary guests and the subject of the instruction. I waited just outside the secondary point of access as Marco welcomed the group. "Distinguished ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we are honored to host a private presentation today. The Chief Executive Officer of one of our key collaborative entities is present to offer a few remarks and personally extend gratitude to some of our most highly valued visitors. Please enjoy your chilled beverage. She will join you momentarily." I could make out the soft chatter, the sound of cups, seats being shifted, some quiet amusement, followed by a hush, signaling my entry time. I walked through the side entryways, posture erect, head held up, the taps of my footwear gently ringing on the stone flooring. It took just a moment for them to notice. First, my niece, her beverage halfway to her lips. Next, my brother, who glanced again, then mother. Her mouth parted slightly, her gaze flicking toward Matteo, then back to me. She appeared bewildered, confused, as if her mind couldn't make sense of the scene unfolding. "Good afternoon," I announced, standing at the room's front with composed assurance. "Thank you everyone for being present." Stillness remained. I let the quiet linger for another instant, then went on. "My identity is Olivia Davis. I established and head Davies Consulting, a company providing branding services to high-end venues globally, like this very estate." I paused once more. "I want to offer a personal greeting to our attendees here today, especially the Davies relatives." A clear gasp echoed. Sarah stared at me, her eyes wide. Tom's hand fell away from his wine glass. Jessica blinked hard as if trying to assure herself she wasn't dreaming. My mother, still motionless, like a figure carved from disbelief. "This grand country estate," I went on, stands out as a key collaborator within our collection. We assisted in revamping their brand presence, guest encounter, and online methods. I've worked closely with the leadership group here since the first planning stages. Some of the artwork visible on the walls was chosen from a selection I personally found. The sparkling wine you're sipping, produced under a special label we debuted the prior season. I smiled kindly, and the reason you're in upgraded accommodations enjoying complimentary provisions and seated in this very room is because I requested they look after you. My tone stayed steady. Without exception. I let the words settle. Not with irritation, not with arrogance. With plain fact. For the first occasion in quite a while, I wasn't seeking to be noticed. I simply occupied the space where I belonged. I would like to ask Mateo to hand out a little present to each person here. A small token of appreciation for being involved in this happening. Mateo stepped ahead, distributing gift totes containing bespoke cards, upscale skin treatment sets, and individualized schedules for the duration of their visit. Each one was marked courtesy of Olivia Davis. Silence held until finally my father. He stood up slowly from his spot and met my gaze over the table. Olivia, he started, his voice husky. How come you didn't mention this? And I responded plainly, since you never inquired. Then I turned, thanked the assistants, and departed through the identical side entryway I used to enter. Not with display, not with tears, but with grace. And behind me, I left a room full of individuals still trying to grasp how the daughter they had dismissed had just redefined every guideline they thought they understood. I did not return to the main hall. Following the disclosure, I walked the lengthy outer passage of the estate until I reached the sculpted area overlooking the shore. A spot of quiet and breeze, a spot intended for contemplation. I sat on the stone seat tucked beneath a flowered archway, closed my eyes, and let the sea whisper. I didn't feel triumphant. Not quite. There was no clapping, no procession, only the comforting weight of my own stillness. For the first time in a number of years, I wasn't making myself smaller. I wasn't editing my words or actions to make others more comfortable. I wasn't explaining or softening or attempting to prove myself. I had simply stood in my truth. And that was sufficient. A gentle voice drew me from the air current. Olivia. I opened my eyes. It was Sarah, my niece, standing a few steps away, fidgeting with the edge of her summer dress. May I sit? She requested. I nodded, indicating the empty spot beside me. She settled herself onto the bench and sat in silence for a moment, her legs tucked beneath her, her gaze on the water. That was truly something, she commented finally. I offered a soft chuckle. Yes, it was. They had no idea about any of it. Indeed, they did not. I think I'm the only one who had a feeling, she added, glancing my way. You just seemed different this time. Sure of yourself, like it didn't matter if anyone approved. It didn't, I stated simply. She nodded, drawing her knees up to her chest. They've always spoken about you like you were the challenging one, she admitted, her voice low. But I never truly understood why. You've always been the one who was present. You came to every show. You helped me pick out my very first laptop. And you never boasted about anything. I turned to face her, my heart softening. Thank you. She paused, then said, I think they just don't know how to handle someone who isn't dependent on them. That observation hit home. Not harsh, simply accurate. I wasn't dependent on their approval. I never had been, but I had desired something more perilous than that. I had wanted to be understood. We remained seated for a while longer before Sarah stood, brushing off her clothing. I think they're all kind of bewildered, she said with a slight smile. Dad said you set up a surprise move. Grandma looked like she'd seen a spirit. Grandpa keeps checking his phone as if he's trying to figure out what world he's on. I couldn't help but laugh. That sounds about right. She gave me a sideward embrace. Clumsy teenage, but heartfelt. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Then she vanished down the garden walkway. By the time I returned to my chambers that evening, the sun had begun to descend below the skyline, bathing the estate in rosy golden light. On the surface inside my room, I found 3 envelopes, each one inscribed by hand, each from a different member of my relatives. I sat down and opened them, one after the other. From Father. Olivia, I don't know where to start. I believed I knew who you were. Focused, earnest, too occupied for all of this. But the truth is, I knew nothing. Not genuinely. And that is my responsibility. I see now that you have constructed something extraordinary, and I see how blind we have been. I am sorry for not seeing you sooner. Dad. From Tom, my older brother. Olivia, look, I'm not good with language, but I owe you an apology. We treated you like a secondary point for a good few years, and then we were surprised when you didn't beg for a spot at the main gathering. The reality is, we should have been asking you how to assemble the whole thing initially. Mark. From Mother. Olivia, I'm still trying to take it all in. I want you to understand that I never meant to cause you pain, but I see now how my words, my decisions have done just that. I was mistaken. You're not too serious. You're not challenging. You're remarkable. And I hope somehow we can mend things. Mom. I placed the notes gently on the surface and leaned back, allowing the content to sink in. They did not erase everything, but they held weight. For a number of years, I had existed in the shadows of their expectations. Excessive, insufficient, too different. I had built defenses to shield myself, accepted being on the edges. But now the defenses remained, yet the entryways were open. They could pass through if they were willing to meet me where I truly was, not where they recalled me being. As the sky grew dark and the first stars appeared, I poured a serving of grape beverage and stepped onto the outer space. The air carried the scents of herbs and sea. And for the first occasion, I did not feel like the unnoticed daughter. I felt like myself. Recognized, established. The dawn of our last morning arrived slowly, wrapped in a thick quietness that felt distinct from the prior days. The typical low sound of talking over the morning meal had been replaced by a hesitant silence. No more smug amusement, no tapping of cups or careless teasing. Instead, soft acknowledgments, side glances, and something unfamiliar from my family. Deference. I observed from the higher outer space as they gathered near the garden area, each of them dressed for the group journey of the shoreline plant beds, an excursion they had signed up for long before realizing I would be there. No one had brought up canceling. Instead, they looked uncertain, as if they did not know where to position me now that I no longer fit into the character they had assigned me years ago. And truthfully, I did not fit there any longer. I wasn't attempting to. That was the beauty of this entire situation. I hadn't changed to demonstrate they were incorrect. I had simply presented them with the version of me they had decided not to observe, and now they were left to catch up. I decided to walk with them to the transport vehicle, not to confront but to offer something different. Resolution. Mother noticed me first, her shoulders tensed before relaxing. Olivia, she said almost too quietly. Good morning, I replied, stepping into pace beside her. We walked in silence for a few moments. I meant what I wrote, she said. In the note. I nodded. I know. I don't anticipate forgiveness right away. I stopped, turned towards her. I am not holding resentment, I stated calmly. But I am finished trying to earn affection that should have been provided without condition. Her eyes welled slightly. She nodded. I understand. Perhaps she did. Perhaps she didn't. But she wished to. And that was enough for the time being. The plant bed journey was relaxed, picturesque, a buffer between tension and realization. I stayed close to Sarah, who walked next to me like an anchor point, asking questions about the produce, the terrain, my enterprise. It was only partway through the tasting that I noticed my brothers had shifted. They weren't making jokes at my expense. They weren't overlooking me. They were paying attention. When I elaborated on the significance of online strategy and boutique venue prosperity, Tom leaned in and commented, "You ever consider instructing this kind of thing?" It wasn't a lot, but it was novel. The final evening, I went back to the outer space where I had observed them that initial night. Only this time, I was not an outsider. I was just me, Olivia, daughter, head executive, individual who didn't need to be less to be included. Mateo joined me briefly, holding 2 servings of bubbly. You achieved it, he remarked, raising his glass. I didn't do it to prevail, I responded. No, he agreed. But you did gain something, just not what they anticipated. We tapped glasses. As the sun lowered below the water, my family assembled for one last group picture. This time they looked for me. Olivia, Sarah called, signaling me over. Come on, we need you in this one. I hesitated, then walked over slowly. Mother moved aside to create room beside her. And as I stepped in, she rested her hand gently on my upper arm. Not possessive, not for show, tentative, a quiet sign of peace. The picture taker counted down. 3, 2, 1, snap. I didn't know what the image would look like, but I knew how I felt standing there. Not like a secondary detail, not like a spirit, but like a person who had returned not to be accepted, but to be perceived for who she always was. The following morning, I departed before them. I did not say extended farewells. I did not require a dramatic exit. I simply completed the checkout process, thanked the staff members, and walked through the entry area like someone who had no need to prove a thing. Mateo met me by the vehicle. I trust this will not be your final visit, he commented. I smiled. Next time, I won't bring an audience. As the vehicle pulled away, I glanced back one last time. Not at the estate. At the individual I had been when I arrived. Unseen, excluded, wounded. And at the individual I was now, observed, solid, unshaken.